Hello, everybody. Today we are talking with Mr. Zack Rutledge. He's an author of the book Depression Relief Playbook. Check it out. He's got a lot of really practical tips for depression. I shared a little bit about my own experience. He shared a little bit about his own experience. If you're somebody that's dealing with depression, we all know how hopeless it can feel sometimes. So, yeah, I hope you check out his book, check out the podcasts, and as always, until next time. All right, today we have Zack Rutledge over Zoom. Thank you, Zack, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're talking about a heavy topic. It's depression is definitely, it's one of those things where I have an immense amount of respect for it. It's hard for some people that don't have it to understand. Like I have my wife, for example. Like she does never she never understood like when I was dealing with things. She's just like, we'll just go to sleep and wake up and deal with it. You know, she just had the kind of a hardcore cut off attitude about it. And I remember just being like, well, but I don't need to have a point. I just want to talk about it. You know, I just want to, work through my emotions with you. And she's just like, oh, well, look in the mirror, man. You know, it was kind of hardcore, but, you ended up writing a book about it. So it's called the Depression Relief Playbook. And I kind of went on Amazon and checked out some of the people's responses to it. And they're just glowing recommendations that they suffer from depression and anxiety. And they say like, read this, you can't edit it. You can read it in one sitting and go back to it and study it each time. You need a little bit of help and kind of like have it next to your bedside table. It sounds like a real helpful thing. So it must feel good to be able to help people, right?
Yeah, it does. Well, that was one of the compliments I really liked. Was one of the points was I wanted to make something where people can go back to it and read it over and over.
Yeah.
And another point is, that they said there too, is I wanted to make it really short. The last thing somebody with depression wants to do is sit down and read something that's 350 pages. It's going to be tough enough getting somebody to go after that book, which is really kind of why it was designed to be more of like a gift. But even if it's just something that's sitting on their bedstand, I even say this in the book itself. I'm like, even if this book just sits on somebody's bedstand or other positive books, it's that little bit of hope that you're creating there. And it's also just, you're creating that other alternative other than your phone.
Right.
When you're laying in bed, right? When people can't sleep, which is a bad habit, when you're creating that other alternative, and it's digestible, and it's filled. It's as compact as I could make it. But to get back to your wife, sorry, that's like been pinging on my mind.
Yeah, it was a weird way. I didn't even plan to start that way, but it just popped in my head. So I was like, I'm just gonna throw my wife under the bus there.
So no, that's cool. That's cool. So I should actually give a little bit of my background. So
please do. Yes, thank you.
And pardon me if I'm not looking at my screen. I'm kind of all over the place right now. So a little bit of my background is I'm a personal trainer. And I'm a fitness nutrition specialist, and I'm a certified brain trainer with the Functional Institute. I'm also a black belt in karate. I'm getting my yoga teacher certification in a couple months. That'll be finished. And I have an MA from American University, but I'm also just now, I just got into a program to be a licensed therapist. So that starts in January. So that's like a little bit of my background. Thank you. Yeah. So I do take private clients with, myriad of different things. That being said, I have worked with a lot of clients, and back to your wife, and I talk about this quite a bit. When you have depression, of course, it's important to practice forgiveness with yourself, which can be pretty difficult. But it's also important to practice forgiveness and understanding with people who don't have depression, because they're not going to understand. she's obviously not a bad person. She, she just doesn't get it, and that's just how it goes. And for a long time, I didn't get that. When I was in, my deep dark states, uh, I I was like, well, why don't these people understand that I don't want to do this? Um, and that's a practice. You have to practice that forgiveness and understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. There, I think like there's a for me. I personally have a relatively. It was more just a lighter hit of it, And when I moved to Germany, I think it exposed me to all of these mental weaknesses I might have had, just because I was just trying to deal with the language and. I would see her talking to other guys in the room and stuff, and I don't understand a word. So all of a sudden, like I was never a jealous person, and then all of a sudden, I'm feeling these flashes of jealousy, and I just triggered a lot of things. It was a good growing experience. But
good point.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I just remember the nap really did help though. As much as I hated to admit it, when she's like, just go lay down, take a nap, and like reset, and it really did help. But this is something that I think I'm probably not a perfect case. Like I think we're talking about, harder depressions. This book is probably going to help people that are really searching and grasping. And like you said, there's these big long books. I remember I had a buddy that we kind of tried to help each other out, and I remember him buying like a book, and it was like from a neurologist, and just thinking about it was just so deep and so scientific that it was just like overwhelming just to even try and attack this book, right?
Yeah, well, um, like you said, you had like a lighter flavor, right? And that's the way I put it is depression comes in different flavors.
Yeah.
Okay. So even though you didn't feel it the same way I do, I would argue maybe nobody feels it exactly the same way.
Right.
But there are a million different flavors, and there are all different types of intensities, I guess you could look at it, and all kinds of different coping mechanisms. So what I did was I come at it with the D-Day approach, so to speak. So I come at it with everything. So we're coming at it from every angle because there are different, along with all the different flavors, there's different causes, right? Sometimes it's like an actual physical cause. One thing now that, well, I guess the past few years now, is people are discovering that your gut health can actually affect your depression because you actually create more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain. So people are actually prescribing probiotics, believe it or not, as one of the methods. Sometimes it's a brain injury. Sometimes it's traumatic event. Sometimes it's a lifestyle. So there are all kinds of different types. So I would argue that. So what I did was this took me a long time to compile this book, and I would argue that the book would help in any of these situations because we come at it from every single angle, even if you're not suffering from depression, this was a really nice compliment I had, was even if you're not suffering from depression, this would be a really great book because it's gonna shore up any kind of those missing gaps there, right? There's always gonna be work to be done. This is a really good starting point to kind of fill in if you're really lacking in any one area, not just physically or nutritionally, but so we try to come at it from every single angle. Yeah.
Well, and that's what motivated. Like you dealt with depression yourself, and you were trying probably to find. I'm just kind of shooting in the wind here. Did you try and find you're compiling this book almost as a way to help yourself, or how did you come about?
No. So
Exactly.
what happened was this was a long time. Yeah, I had a very long process. So I learned the hard way. My deepest moment where I would start calling it a serious depression was I was 18, my best friend was killed. And that's when it all got set off. And so that was the summer after high school. And back in those days, we didn't have social media, and we weren't online nearly as much. So everyone left for college. So I was truly alone. So I didn't have like friends to lean on, and that was it. So that was the toughest point. I mean, there were definitely some chemical things going on earlier as a kid, but that was tough, right? So that was as low as you could get, especially looking back. That was low. And I slowly, brick by brick, kind of built myself up, and it took years and years and years, right? So I had failed out of college at that point. And, but what happened was, you know, cut to a decade later, and I got my undergrad with honors, and I'm in grad school. And what happened was I would just kind of naturally, I don't know if it was, you know, the universe, so to speak, or if it was just the way I carried myself. A lot of people who were really struggling in school would approach me because they knew my past, and or they would eventually get to know my past, and they would say, hey, what can I do for this? What can I do for this? What can I do for this? So when COVID hit, another difficult time, I was getting a lot of people saying, you know, what can I do for this? So I had all these letters and emails that I had written to other people, and I was going through and searching, you know, all these things I had sent to other people. I was like, you know what, this is crazy. I had lost my job because of COVID. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make a book. I'm going to write this whole thing together. So that was going to make it a lot easier. So if I compile all these things and stick them all together, I could just send that out. So that's kind of how that all came together.
That's interesting. That's that. So as you in college, and you have your friends and everyone kind of just, you know, if they get to know you, obviously they get to know that part of you, and so they think, well, gosh, he's successful, he's working it, he's doing what he's doing. You know, how did he make that transition, right? Because people stay in that state of mind. That's such a huge tragedy at a young age, at this very open age, that defines your life, and you didn't let it define you in a sense. You created.
Oh, I did at the time. I did at the time, for sure. Yeah, for years. Absolutely. I let that define me.
I mean, how could it not, right? I mean, Jesus, it's
yeah. And I guess that's one of the advantages I have is that I went through it. And that wasn't, you know, there were some other big traumatic events, but you know, I don't talk about it too much in the book, but since I had gone through it, and I tried every single thing that I could possibly find under the sun, right? Which I feel like is also important when it comes to, I do a chapter on medication, which I was hesitant to take, and I talk about this in the book, and I feel like I'm almost grateful for my experience, because since I tried everything else, medication was just like that little, like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
And since I have that real life experience taking it, I can tell people, I can explain to people, and you'd be surprised how many people I'd run into who are just completely against it. And I get it, but so many people completely against it, like I was, and they were afraid of what was going to happen. But I have that experience now that I can share and throw in the book. And not everyone's going to be the same, but at least I have some kind of an understanding and some kind of a reference for people.
I would be the same way. Like, I kind of feel like it's an interesting way that you put it, like, right, not just taking medication and having that as the thing, and then I don't care about my diet, or I don't do exercise, I don't do any of these things that I should be doing anyway, and I just patch it up with medication, right? That's obviously a cool way of saying, like, as a cherry on top, right? Like, I'm doing all the things right, and I'm just giving myself that last little chemical imbalance help, or whatever that is, with the medication, or like you said, probiotics, serotonin. That's like a huge one, right? That's a real new thing,
right?
But
which may not be the case for everybody, right? Because everyone's different. Which we tend to miss. But thank you for pointing that out. That's definitely at the very least, you're going to want to change your mindset and start working on getting the garbage out of your kitchen before you start trying the medication.
But the thing about medication, to me, like, I personally, I would not want to take it either. Like, I feel like, why can't I get this figured out on my own, you know?
Super common. And I had that mindset, right? Like I'll do this on my own. It wasn't until I was doing okay. I had a couple TV shows on the air, and I was doing pretty well. My day job is I do video production. And I was talking to my primary care doctor, and she knew I was still struggling a little bit, And she was like, why are you hesitating? Why are you hesitating? And I told her all of my reasons why I didn't want to do it. And she's like, it's just going to make you that much more productive. And I was just like all about productivity at the time.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And she's like, and you can stop anytime you want. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, let's just try it. So, so that was the thing that finally talked me into it, was that you could stop anytime you want. Because a lot of time, a lot of the experiences I had heard was people who they were hesitant because they say, well, oh, once you're on it forever, you know, that kind of thing, which isn't the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels like that's more like, I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about it to really dive
That's
in.
why we're talking about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But we can also talk about, you know, this. Do you ever feel like that? Like, do you feel like there's this, do I want to get off? Like, could you just be like, have that freedom to say like, I'm just not going to be productive. Like who really wants to not be productive, right? Like if you're in a healthy state of mind, being productive is like a positive thing. Like it's a positive stress. Being productive gives you back these feelings of like self-worth because you're working hard at something, even though it's kind of stressy. And that's actually a real healthy, I feel like that's a healthy stress, right?
Yeah. Well, that's just my personality. I know a lot of people who aren't that way, who just want to chill, right? But she was kind of playing on my personality, was that it makes things easier. But I would argue that it makes everything easier, whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So even if you're not trying to be productive, even if it's just you're in bed and your thoughts are going in the wrong direction and you're having a tough time kind of overriding them, it just makes everything easier.
And so when you talk about these bricks, and so I'm thinking like, okay, so what are the bricks for you? Like if you can now, you look back, you wrote the book, you have this kind of a playbook in your, well, it is a playbook. That's what you call it. So
yeah.
Give me some of the playbook secrets.
Sure.
If you can.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, I opened the book with a very brief statement of how I've been there and how I can understand. So, because I hated when I read stuff and it was like, this guy doesn't get it, or this lady just doesn't understand what's going on, right? So I do start with a brief kind of pretty deep chapter. It gets lighter from there, right?
Right on.
So, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, there's a whole chapter on mindset. Actually, you know what? I love that chapter. If anybody is like thinking about getting the book, just shoot me an email. I'll send you that chapter. That's tough for me to talk about, not emotionally, but like I don't know how to. I wrote it in a way more eloquent way. It's also pretty early in the morning here. I just woke up. I apologize.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Remington. Like my hair's all over, my eyes are red. I didn't realize until I saw myself on the computer. But yeah, if anybody wants that chapter, just shoot me an email and I'll send them that chapter. Okay, so that's on mindset, right? Because that's one of the things that if you are suffering with depression, it's important to read this because it's going to get you moving in the right direction. Okay, so we have this whole mindset shift that we have to make. I have chapters on fitness. Well, just moving your body. I don't want to say fitness because a lot of people are hesitant to go into gyms, and I give plenty of different options for moving your body and, you know, having fun again with your body. I have a section on nutrition. I actually have a smoothie recipe in there that I swear by, because a lot of the time people, have you heard the term hangry?
That's my middle name.
Okay. So I spoke with someone last night who never heard that. So I know people, a big thing lately is I know people who get super depressed or anxious because they're like just forgetting to eat. So I have this smoothie recipe in there that I swear by. Really good. But anyway,
True.
Yeah, I have that in there. I have a chapter on and this is interesting. I have a chapter on clothing and appearance. Okay. And which is like kind of comes out of the blue. And that was like a hot topic with a couple people I spoke with. Basically just not letting your body go to a mess. How it does affect the way you feel. And I wrote that chapter. That was actually from a thing I'd written for a friend who we were in grad school, and you would think he's a pretty high performer. He was showing up third day, same shirt with the same stains all over it, just like really, really not taking care of himself.
Right.
And I was like, dude, and it was just a chapter about, it's a very short chapter about how when you start taking care of yourself, it does create that little bit of a shift, right? And that's all we're looking for is, like I said, brick by brick, these little shifts, right? And when you stack all these together, you're going to make a big difference. You know, I have a section on nutrition, and I'm sorry, supplements in there. I have a section on meditation, a section on medication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meditation is something that's new in my life. I kind of picked it up since the pandemic. When I look back, I realized that maybe it was it makes sense, but it seemed at the time like kind of just of a coincidence, right? But this Wim Hof breathing.
Oh yeah, great.
That's fantastic stuff. But then the meditation itself, just I kept with it, and I've been doing it maybe like really solidly for 2 or 3 months now.
Good for you.
It's like you're never going back, right? God.
Yeah, good for you. I've actually slipped the past couple of weeks. I've been moving. It isn't a great excuse, but I've been moving.
Well, but the excuses are so easy too, because it's like it happens so fast. Like we had the time change here, and I've been meditating really early in the morning. Like I get up before the rest of the family, and I have my time then. But then all of a sudden, like my 4:30 a.m. was 3:30 a.m. So I was like, that's not happening. I'm not gonna like you realize how pointless these time changes are in that moment. It's like I feel fine. Like I don't need to get up. So it took me a good 2 or 3 weeks to kind of curve that back into like my schedule. You know, it's
yeah, and that's okay. That'll happen, right? That's gonna happen. It's part of that forgiveness, right? But
well, let's talk about that. Like the self-forgiveness. That's something that like I think a lot of people, whether you're depressed or not, have a hard time with, right? Like people are just so hard on themselves, and I myself included.
So I tell my members this when we're in the gym. They're so hard on themselves, and what I tell them is, would you say these things to yourself, or would you say these things that you are saying to yourself? Would you say those to other people?
Yeah.
And they say, of course not. And I say, well, guess what? You're a person too. So why are you saying it to yourself? Right? Yeah. It's a funny thing how we're almost masters at it, at just beating ourselves up in the guise that it's making ourselves better. Right. I guess that's one of the points, for lack of a better term, that we do it, right? Is we think it's making ourselves better.
Yeah, and if you let it slip in there into these smaller, like if you let it slip into kind of like the way that you talk to yourself all the time, you don't maybe realize that it could have limiting effects in a sense, right?
It builds up, and it builds up, and it's a loop that just goes and goes and goes, and you are literally creating stronger connections in your brain, that negative connection, right? I put this really great little fable in the book, and I don't know if you ever heard this, the story of two wolves.
I'm all ears with my headphones
on.
On.
So it's this old Native American fable. Okay, I believe it's Cherokee. So there's a grandfather and a grandson, and the grandfather says to the grandson, "There's two wolves that live inside all of us. One is called the courage wolf, and that's obviously courage. It's love. It's humor. It's fun. It's all of our positive attributes." Okay. Then we have another wolf that lives inside all of us called the fear wolf, and that's fear, shame, anger, blame, and all of our negative attributes. So the grandson says, well, which one wins? And the grandfather says, whichever one you feed.
Yeah.
So, and I'll say that a few times, make sure you're feeding the courage wolf, right?
Yeah.
That's the wolf that's going to win inside of you. So you can't be walking around feeding that fear wolf all the time.
Yeah.
Or else that's going to win.
Yeah. And fear is so weird too, right? Oh God. Cause it's like, it's good. Like you want to have a little bit of fear. Maybe it kind of sparks that. It gives you that defense mechanism, but technically, how many of your fears have ever came true, right? Like
and yeah, no, absolutely. And we're still wired to be cavemen, right?
That's what it is, right? Yeah.
The fears we have now, it's not nearly as dangerous as it was. We're also wired for negativity. So our brains are built. So like, we're wired for negativity because let's just say back when we were cavemen, I see a saber-toothed tiger, I see a pile of berries. It's way more advantageous for me to be paying attention to that saber-toothed tiger, right? Scanning for the dangers, because that thing's going to take me out now. The berries can wait, right? So that's essentially the theory on why we're wired towards negativity, because we think, oh, this thing can take us out now, and it's life-threatening.
Right.
Well, the hardware hasn't been updated. Okay, it's been a long time, but the hardware, we still think all these, or we still react viscerally that work deadlines and traffic and all these setbacks, that they're so intense. Our body, literally our sympathetic nervous system kicks up because we're treating it as if it's a life-threatening thing. But the problem is nowadays that's just a natural part of your day, because you're going to be coming across all kinds of stressors, but our body's not built for that. We weren't coming across 10 saber-toothed tigers when we were cavemen, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important that we keep that in check and create mental models, create ways of coping with all these different stressors.
Yeah. And then like the stress, to me, like the palatable, how would you say that? When something, you can taste it.
Yeah, that's it.
Would be like financial stress, right? Like that's just like the fear of, and especially right now, right? Since
sure,
like you said, you lost your job, you wrote a book, you turned it around, you hustled and bustled, but I've heard so many stories of people it's basically disseminated everything that they've just been wiped out completely because the government just closes everything down. And it's like, wait a minute, I just started this business with like my last savings and now I'm done,
Yeah.
Even if I'm not like prone to depression, I'm depressed, right? Like
Absolutely. The thing to remember, one of the things to remember, and I'm not going to solve anybody's financial issues. This has been, obviously, this past year and few months has been just awful.
Crazy. Yeah.
You can't affect what happens, but you can affect how you react, right? You can take control of certain things in your life, right? So you need to focus on that. You can focus on your reaction. You can focus on how you're going to, you're not going to let yourself go. You're still going to take care of yourself and others. It's a tough thing. It's really, if you're in a tough financial situation, and I get it, which is part of the reason I wrote this book, this is just, I would hope this would keep you from going off the rails, because I do know, there are stories of suicide from the financial stress of this.
Yeah, the numbers have definitely gone up from what I've heard. I mean, numbers can always be misleading, but I believe it. I totally believe it. And I think like this. It's interesting what you said about. I remember the first 6 weeks about. Like I remember watching a video in Italy, and this woman was just like, "It's in the air, save your children," And I'm a helicopter parent to begin with, So I was like, okay, the compound is closed down. Like I closed it down for 6 weeks. I didn't even and I was like way ahead of that. People were laughing at me when I go shopping with a mask and stuff. They were like, I literally, like, a dude openly laughed in my face. And I'm like, is it because the mask? He's like, yeah, it's because the mask.
Well, we didn't know, right? We didn't know.
Yeah. And
this is brand new for all of us.
Right.
So,
and yeah. I was like, I was so self-conscious about it. I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm just going to go shopping anyway. I didn't buy any toilet paper for some reason. I don't know why people were buying toilet paper.
Was that a hot topic there too?
Oh yeah.
In the US, we were out.
Yeah, we were out for a while. I was really thinking like, okay, we're going to washcloths here any minute now. But there was a moment there when I was at home, and Eric can attest to this because Eric and I had just practically we just got started with the podcast and stuff, and then I had you kind of like working remotely or from home and just trying to figure out what we're gonna do next, and it was like everything was just kind of like, okay, it's shaken up, it's thrown out. And I remember staying home with the kids and like getting really fast to being real comfortable being like, well, I'm just gonna stay in pajamas today. And I'm just not gonna, and you feel that, like you said, you feel like this, like, ah, shit, maybe I should just get up and brush my teeth and go to work, even though I don't even leave the house, you know? And
Yeah.
and that takes a lot more discipline than I realized, like, because there's nothing there to really, you don't need to get up and look presentable because it doesn't matter. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it just matters to you, you know?
Good point, right? Okay, so in COVID times or not, a lot of time people with depression would be like, okay, this doesn't matter. I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to do anything, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times people would think that. So one important thing, and I stress this in the book, you got to do the work. And I'm hoping that chapter that I'm actually going to give away to your listeners, I'm hoping that chapter would convince, you know, anyone who's I don't want to say lazy. That's not a good word. who's lost their inertia.
Lost it as a nice way to say it, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to do the work, right? And that's one of the hardest shifts to make. And yeah, you're right. You know, this pandemic is definitely one funny thing about this pandemic. Along with that, is it's tended to heighten everybody's quirks. Like I have friends with ADD, but also OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and their obsessions and compulsions have skyrocketed over the past year. So it's an interesting time, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't ever think of that. Like, dude, your car has been cleaned before, but now it's like immaculately. Yeah, I mean, you make a joke about it, but it could, like, OCD. Like I remember I've seen the comments thing, and some people are like, you know, people like joke about it, but when it gets to the point where it's clinical, it's a hard thing to deal with. It's a
real tough thing. I have a great friend. She's actually in the band with me, and her hands are just cracked and bleeding because she's always washing her hands. And that's not necessarily to avoid COVID. It was just her OCD kicked into overdrive. And
yeah. And I mean, the washing the hands thing is kind of like, seriously, like it really got bad though. If you realize before the pandemic, like how many people probably didn't even wash their fucking hands. Like if you think about it, it's kind of weird to like think that like that it really had to be like people have to tell you to wash your hands, but it really was like that. Like,
yeah, that was a shocker, right? That was a big wake up call.
Like the kids doing it in the kindergarten, like nothing changed in the kindergarten. Like they always washed their hands.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like the rules there was no hygienic rules that really changed there. But for some reason we get into the adult world and we're like, okay, I just go to the restroom and just be like, I'll do it next time.
It's nuts, right? It's funny. It's funny. You got to have a sense of humor about some of this stuff too, because otherwise it's going to swallow us, right? But we're rounding third, I think, right? We're getting towards the end of this.
I'm still skeptical. I feel like multiple times I'm just going to want to move to Texas or to Florida. That's how I feel lately, but we'll see. I mean,
you know, but here's the thing, man. It's everywhere.
Yeah. No, I just, at least there you can go, you have like a halfway normal life. Like from what I've heard.
Oh, you're still pretty locked down there?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off topic, but
no, it's no problem.
Here in the U.S., it's not so much like one blanket rule. It's so here in New Jersey, we're still pretty locked down because we got hit actually, we were extremely locked down because we got hit really, really hard. Now we're starting to lighten up because we got the vaccine out quickly, and so many people got vaccinated. Now we're starting to really open up. But I know other states, they're all different. It's kind of up to the states here. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what here in Germany it is too. But yeah. Anyway, you're right. Like one thing that I wanted to touch on when you mentioned that, and I felt like that really helped me too, and was to focus on the things that you can control. Right. Like that's something that is so empowering. We had a situation in the pharmacy. My wife owns a pharmacy, and I'm sure it's because of the pandemic, because of the financial stresses and stuff. We had a business partner go out of business, and it just created a huge amount of stress on the pharmacy. And we're sitting there and we're like, you know, there was like 2 or 3 days where you feel like you're just running on fumes because you're like, you have no control over the situation, right? You're completely out of control. And there was one, like, I remember there's a specific moment where I was like, you know what can we do? Like what can I do? Even if it's just a phone call, or even if it's just making a list of like the people that need to get in contact with or whatever. And as soon as that decision was made, it was like, oh, I got the control back. Even if my circle of influence went down to like this, at least I'm working in here and I'm not.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, that because what else are you going to do, right? And I have a chapter in the book called Small Victories, where that's what it feels like a lot of the time. That's a great metaphor for life. Sometimes it feels like everything's out of control. So you're going to focus on those small victories, and once you get those little wins, stack your next little win, stack your next little win. I remember when I was first kind of coming out of things, flossing was a little win for me. It sounds funny now, right? And I can laugh about it now because I've done the work. But that was like, all right, cool. I did something that kind of matters. All right, what's the next little win I can get? So I'm glad you said that.
Building on top of these small things, the flossing is a good one. I went to the dentist the other day, and I realized that I definitely been lacking on the flossing. The woman, she was having a blast too. Like she had this smile on her face. I was like, she's enjoying this way too much right now. She was just going for it. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, and nutrition is interesting. You said something about your diet in another interview, and I thought that was interesting because you mentioned that you were like you said you're ashamed to say it that you hadn't eaten your vegetables or something like that. And
that's funny. So you heard that show?
Yeah, she's a really sweet podcaster. I want to check more of her stuff out.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah, like I'm that guy too, right? Like I have like athletic greens as my only saving grace. Like I just drink it, but when you changed your diet, did you feel a change in your mental agility too?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Man, it was a big difference. Along with that, a lot of people tend to underhydrate. They're definitely not drinking enough water. Which is, pretty easy fix. You fill up one of those jugs, or you fill up whatever. There you go. See, I would be right now, but I didn't want to have to run up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the show.
That's so true, though. Yesterday I had this full bottle at the end of the day, still sitting on my desk, just looking at me. I'm like, what? Why did I just carry it with me now? Like, it's terrible.
So if people can see this, that's what you need. You need one of those bottles, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to keep you accountable.
Yeah. It's about 2 liters, well, 1.5 liters, but it's not
interesting enough. Some people, believe it or not, some researchers are saying some cases of depression are brought on by dehydration. Crazy enough, right? Because people are that dehydrated.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an important thing. But yeah, as far as the food, I mean, I don't need to belabor the point, but what you put in your body is obviously, your brain is part of your body, and it's going to affect how the machinery runs for sure.
Yeah, my wife also, since she's kind of like this, she's the gut master, right? Like she's all about probiotics. Like we have, she deals with women that are going through pregnancies, and I also have issues when women are pregnant, they can't really do anything, right? They're just stuck in this situation. You can't take any antibiotics, can't do anything bad. So but you can do probiotics, right? And so and you have a lot of people that come in there and they've dealt with. I can only speak for myself. When I take probiotics, I feel more. It's weird to say it, but it's like almost like I'm in a better mood, honestly.
Well, yeah, like we said earlier, most of your serotonin is actually created in your gut.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah, and serotonin for me, like just it's almost like it's a hormone, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's about as much as I know, right? Like okay, it's a hormone. Like what do I need to do? It's like do I need to take vitamin C and vitamin D, and how do I get my serotonin? How do I get that into my body? How do I create it? How do I working out, right? And doing exercising and stuff like that also increases your serotonin levels, correct?
Yeah, it does. And also, so the way a lot of antidepressants work, a lot of them are called SSRIs.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Okay, so what happens is when your brain kind of gives a little squirt of serotonin, you have these receptors that like feel it. Okay. So
Right.
that basically stimulates your nerves and you feel it. Okay. Then on the other side, so you've squirted out this serotonin, so it can't stay in there forever. So you have these little like basically tubes, and they pull them back in. They pull it back in. So it squirts out, pulls back in. It's kind of like this balance, and it kind of seesaws depending on what we're doing. If you get a soccer goal, you know, a bunch more is going to shoot out. Sorry, football. You're in Germany.
Yeah.
If you get a goal,
Yeah.
it's going to squirt out a bunch, right? And then it's going to slowly get sucked in. Well, what happens is there are these little tiny, um, the tubes. You know, I'm not sure of I'm not positive of the mechanism. I know this is the way actually caffeine works,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's a physical plug. It's probably not a physical plug with these drugs, but it slows down sucking that back in. Reuptake inhibitor, right?
Yeah.
So it stops pulling it back in. So if you're not creating enough, it doesn't make you make more. It just sucks it back in to a lesser degree. So it's keeping more floating around in there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, SSRIs. I never knew what that stood for. Okay, so it's a retake inhibitor in that sense that it keeps it from the body taking too much back. So it's like you don't have enough to really to deal with. So we'll just keep enough of that floating around in there. So you
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
have
And you're,
yeah.
yeah. And like it finds that natural balance, or not natural balance. So like, you know, sometimes when you talk about different doses, right? Some people have to take higher dosages. You know, I guess that's finding that reuptake balance, right?
Yeah. What do you think about this? Is just really out of the dark here, but have you ever? I was on watching this Aubrey Marcus podcast, and he's like this from On It. This
Yeah, I know, Aubrey. Yeah.
yeah, cool. Okay, then yeah. Do you know? Obviously, if you know him, then do you know how he went into the jungle and did
Was that the
ayahuasca therapy there, and
Yeah.
he did basically a documentary on himself and his sister and his friends that were there, and God, that was really heavy stuff, you know. But
Yeah, that tends to be. Look, I've never done it.
me neither.
If you are on SSRIs or SNRIs, not a good idea to do that because it can actually kill you.
Okay. Okay.
Doesn't work with each other.
Okay.
So that's an important caveat there.
Right.
However, if you're not on anything, I believe that's more for like a PTSD situation. If you're working through traumatic events. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's absolutely interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I watching him go through it. He kind of gets too verbose for me sometimes. So I'm like, okay, man, I get it. Like you're connected with all the waves of the universe. I get it, you know.
Yeah,
but in that sense, it's very authentic, right? He just is who he is, and he has these conversations with his these other how do you call it? Shaman, like one of his best buddies that they've done it together. You can tell that they've been together on these wavelengths in these trips that they're having. And so when they're having this conversation, even though they're not on drugs, you're just like, okay, I get it. These guys are like on a whole nother level of wavelength when they're talking with each other, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. And I have a family member that also deals with depression. And I was thinking to myself, like, God, you know, I wonder like if I just send this person down there almost like just to see if it's worth a try. I mean, it's like if you're open to it. I mean, I'm almost just curious about it, right? Just to go down there and you might be afraid like the things that it opens up. You might not even know what's coming, right? Like there might be some deep layers of tragedy or problems that you weren't even aware of, and I guess that's the fear that I would have of like, everything's good. Why mess with it? Why shake everything up if I'm on a good level right now, you know? But
sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's still a scary thing. And it seems pretty intense. My thing is I don't want people looking at it as a silver bullet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I firmly believe there's no silver bullet. The more and more I've done this kind of stuff, there is no one thing. So I would much prefer people, you know, exhaust their other there are other, my brain is not working right now.
It's all good. No, I get
There
it.
are other
Like,
options. I
yeah,
don't
well,
know.
but you said that in other interview too, like no silver bullet, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Because these people these snake oil salesmen, right, that always
Hmm.
talk about like this is what it is. Just go down to the jungle and do this tobacco tea, and you're good to go. Like,
And I don't want to say it's not. It may be for some people. It may be they've had that traumatic event and they go do this and they're good. I don't know. Um, but as far as like, you know what? No, I take that back. I think maybe it's going to get them over the hill.
yeah,
It's going to get them. It's going to. But I still believe, they can't come back to life and start treating themselves the same way they've always
right.
had done. Just like, oh well, I'm different now. I don't buy that. I think they've still got to take care of those base layer things.
Yeah, the
You
work.
can't just
Sorry to
can't just
interrupt.
go back and start eating Cheetos and drinking Pepsi and think everything's cool.
Right, like the work has still got to be done. Like there was this one woman that fought with it a lot. She had gotten through like to the fourth session and she was still just like fuck this, like not into it, and by
Yeah.
by like the fourth or fifth one she's just kind of like, I finally forgave myself for being so hard on myself, and that's the first step. But you realize that like now she realized how much work is ahead, but at least she had gotten to that point, like you said, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I
it.
mean, hey, I think it's great that people are thinking about things like this and considering it, and they're not. It's not just seen as weakness going and seeking out something like this.
Yeah, I don't know. It was I have more of a, I guess more of a adventure attitude towards that. But every time I talked about my wife, she's like, "Yeah, no, you got 3 kids and you got a life. You're not going to the jungle and trying some tobacco drink out, just because I think it's like a type of tobacco or something." Anyway, yeah, man, that's good though. I want to check it out. Maybe I can check out the book and then come back to you and then like later on, and go through it a little more. It just
Oh, I would love that. I would
yeah.
love that. Yeah. Yeah.
But the base of it is for me, like, and I love to hear that. Like, oh, by the way, you said you're a black belt in karate. That's interesting
Yeah.
as a fellow martial
Yeah.
artist. Like getting to that level of proficiency in a martial art is just like that for me. That just says a lot because I know what it takes to just even maintain a white belt at the level at jiu-jitsu, and or even to try and go to the next level and to get up to the level of black belt takes a lot of discipline and a lot of physical work too, right? So
Oh yeah. Yeah. It wasn't just the working out though. It was the working in. So it was, the physicality of it absolutely changed my life. Like that was what got me into the fitness and everything. Absolutely, and gave me the confidence to carry myself in a certain way. But the working in was equally as important. So like, doing the Zen meditations, things like that. Man, I just see you're a fellow martial artist. So I mean, there's just like a special place in your heart for it. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Like we had this guy on the Dr. Christian Heim, right? He was talking about love, and it's funny because jiu-jitsu is this ground game, so you have like a lot of. It looks like as a bystander, it looks like 2 guys are just sweating together really close, And so to say that you love this is like it kind of draws. There's like this gray area, but he just talked about a different type of love. Like it's a friendship, it's a kinship, it's a yeah, and it's so like I wish I would have found it earlier in life. Like I found it maybe 2 or 3 years ago,
Okay.
and had I found that type of brotherhood, even with like women, just this in this group,
Yeah.
and then there's someone trying to choke you, right? Like the person when we go live, like it's timed. It's like I'm tapping out because we have fair rules, but basically I'm tapping out. That means I'm dead or unconscious, and so
Yeah.
that just that level of stress, it turns, and because it's in a safe environment, creates such a, I don't know how to say it, like afterwards, that's a serotonin thing, right? Like I come home and my wife's on the couch or something, she's like, how was it? I'm just like, I couldn't even put it really in words. I'm just like, it was great, it was just awesome.
I don't know if it's the kind of thing you can put into words, man. I think it's
Yeah.
I get it because I've done it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
And you have these friendships now, like when you do that with someone, like when I roll with these guys and these girls, and we have like a different level of friendship. Like we just have a deeper connection on a human level that is so healthy. And I'll have it for life. Like there's no, I've had injuries and stuff where my wife's like, oh, he's finally going to quit now. I'm like, not even close. I'm going to get healthy and go right back. Like it's a total different. I've never had a sport like that. I've done football in high school and, I was basically football in high school. Before that, like soccer, but it's just not, it's like, you can't compare it, So
yeah, it's a great thing. I mean, I haven't stepped foot in that arena in a while. That's actually my new thing now, has been really doubling down on my yoga, because I'm a yoga teacher now. There's only so many hours in a day, so that's been my new thing. And that's great too. If you haven't tried yoga, I highly recommend trying that as well.
You mentioned that you're so are you finished with that certification? Or are you
No, I'm like smack in the middle of it.
Right on.
I finished that in August.
So what kind of yoga are you doing? There's multiple ranges out there, right? Like there's different types of yoga that vinyasa yoga is probably the more popular one.
Yeah, vinyasa is kind of like the quicker movement one. But yeah, I'll be certified in that. I mean, what you're getting certified in is like hatha yoga. Okay, so it's like just like the using your body, right? So I could go ahead and do a vinyasa class, or I could go ahead and do a different type of class, right? It's just kind of like this blanket thing. It's through the Yoga Alliance. It's the 200-hour Yoga Alliance certification. Right.
Yeah, I do. I have a friend. My wife's a big yoga person. She's so flexible, it's insane. And every time that I stay on my yoga, it's just like meditation. Every time I stay on my yoga, my jujitsu gets better instantly, because we go into these inverted positions where someone's trying to like kind of stack you with your knees kind of going this way. And if I stay on my yoga, like the guys that I'm training with will be like, oh, he's doing his yoga, because they'll try and put me to that pain point, and like it just gets better. I can just kind of sit there, But
and it's the nice thing. What got me into it was it kind of like filled the gaps, right? As far as like, because I remember I was working out a lot. I was like lifting weights and doing all kinds of stuff, and then I did a yoga class, and I was sore in all these very strange ways, and I was like, oh, these are the things that aren't getting worked, right? So yeah, it just kind of shores things up is kind of like the best way to put it that I can think of to put it. Kind of like putting the mortar in between the bricks type of thing. It's just, and I'm not real flexible, but even just muscularly, it's really fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a different type of strength too, right? Like when you stay on the yoga, you have a different type of strength in your muscles.
It is.
I feel for my hips. Like I feel like when that my hips are so closed, and if I every time I get to it, I try. I'm like, I just want to do something with my hips. I want to open them up and get that.
Yeah. Well, you're an athletic guy, and that's real common, right? To have those tight closed hips. So yeah, highly recommend, guys. Take a yoga class. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you tried hot yoga?
No, I've never done that.
I've heard of that. I want to try that.
Because I work at a yoga studio where I'm teaching like HIIT classes and strength classes there, and we don't have the hot yoga there, so I haven't tried it yet. I would love to though.
What do you have to do? I guess you just have to crank the heater up in the room, or what?
I don't know if it gets that hot.
It doesn't. Yeah, like because I can imagine. Like I go in the sauna a lot and stuff, and I just imagine like doing yoga when it's like I don't know how hot it has to get to what hot yoga temperature is, but the burn is.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, you changed my mind. I don't know if I want to try it.
Yeah, it seems pretty stressy. Cool, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. It's like I'm like so stoked about what you do, and I'm so stoked to be here. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks. I appreciate you saying that. That's we all try and do our thing, and I feel like with the podcast, sharing good information like this is just it feels nice, and I learned something new. Like I didn't know that about these SSRIs. I mean, I guess you could Google it, but when I can have a nice conversation, then.
In my very layman terms, how many compliments do you get on your studio?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I kind of went overboard. I think that was a little.
No, it's super cool. Super, super cool.
Yeah, it's a little, maybe a little insecurity that I had. Like before I even had one episode, I was like, okay, you have to do the studio. It's like, I probably should have started with a cell phone, but.
No, it looks great.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's nice. It has a good sound to it for sure. We can clap in here all day long and it doesn't do the hall effect.
Very cool. Yeah.
Hey, man. You want to hang around for a second after we get offline just so we can say our goodbyes offline?
Of course.
Thank you. I always forget to say that before we go online. All right.